What up, guys? Welcome to the Mo Money Mango podcast, and today we're going to talk about self-driving cars. This is something that I've been thinking about quite extensively. I'm a shareholder in Tesla, and they are trying to achieve autonomy. I think that a lot of people don't really think about the full implications of autonomy. What does it mean to really have a self-driving car, and how is this going to change society? So today we're going to walk through how I think society would change if we actually get full autonomy. Cars can drive on the roads by themselves without human intervention. So the first thing that people usually think about is time. If I have a self-driving car and it drives me to work, that time is now regained. Instead of me wasting time driving, I can answer emails, I can eat, I can sleep, I can do my makeup, I can do a whole host of other things. And I think that's really just the beginning of all of this. If you no longer have to focus when you drive, now driving isn't such a hassle. If it's not a hassle, it means you're probably willing to live farther away. If you have to commute through dense traffic, you're not going to want to do that. But if the car is doing it for you and you're watching Netflix, you're probably more willing to drive a little farther. So I think that one of the big implications of self-driving technology is it makes transit easier. And if it makes transit easier, people are probably going to transit more, live farther away from a city center. We saw a huge deurbanization around the turn of the century of the 1900s when the car was invented. Now that people had an easier way to get around, people did that. And that's how the suburbs came about in North America. So if you make it even easier, we might see even more de-densification. We might see the rural areas springing up even more. So the next thing is safety. Self-driving cars are going to be safer than humans. I know some people might think that's not true. Why would you trust a robot? But let me tell you something. Regulators are not going to approve this technology unless it is safer than a human. Tesla is trying to achieve 10 times safer than a human, an order of magnitude, before they're even gonna request for regulators approve this. I think this is absolutely true. 90% of all automobile deaths are because a human driver is distracted, not paying attention, human error basically. Robots are looking in every direction at the same time. They never get distracted. They never drink and drive. They don't text while driving. They don't get sleepy. Computers, much more attentive. So it really doesn't take that much more to be better than a human. Humans are bad at driving. And Tesla's autopilot is already 9 times safer than a human. So we're already there. We just got to take it a little farther and actually get this stuff approved. 35,000 people a year die in the United States due to automobile accidents. If self-driving cars are 10 times safer, you're going to save about, 28,000 lives every year? Even if robotaxis, self-driving cars, cause 50 deaths per day, runs over 50 people a day, it's still better than humans. Humans kill about 100 people a day in cars. This is really crucial. So if people are dying less on the roads, what does that mean? Emergency rooms are going to be slightly less crowded. If you don't have accidents where people come in with broken bones and whatnot, hospital ERs a little less crowded, a little more able to focus on other things. Less traffic accidents, so less congestion due to traffic accidents. Police time is now freed up instead of stopping people for speeding because self-driving cars aren't going to speed ever. Less traffic accident reports, so the police are going to be freed up significantly, and less interaction between people and police, probably a good thing in some situations. And then if it's safer to get around, insurance rates are going to drop. The reason car insurance is so high is because people are so dangerous on the streets. And I think this is one of the most important things about autonomy, and because it's going to be so safe, even if it doesn't feel like it. One thing to note is that they will generate much more headlines when someone is hurt. Think about the airline industry. If an airline goes down, if a plane goes down, it's national news, even though flying by plane is statistically the safest way to get around. And this is because humans just don't accurately assess risk. So even though you're going to see all the headlines, someone died in a Tesla. Yeah, well, 99 people died in a Ford today. So you just got to be ready for when the media starts striking. I mean, we saw, a death from an Uber self-driving car. I think it was 2018. National headlines, Uber ended up ending their self-driving division because of this. I know it sounds scary, but we got to push through. The 99 other deaths don't get the coverage, and they should. The next implication is regional transport. What do I mean by this? I mean, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's say you're going to Atlanta, Georgia. It's about a 4-hour drive. Well, if time is money, some people might consider flying. Well, if it's 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours, towards the end of that, you really start to consider flying. But once you consider going to the gate, waiting for your plane, getting on, and then once you get to the airport in Atlanta, you've got to actually get to your destination. It could be 2, 3, 4 hours that you've devoted to doing this. If you can just hop in a self-driving car, why would you jump in a plane? I think regional transport is going to be completely changed. And this will probably result in a boom to regional travel. I mean, if I can wake up, say, 9 a.m., have a car drive me to Atlanta, I could spend half the day, and then at 8 p.m., it drives me back. And if you think about the really, really extreme examples, imagine going to bed. Imagine having a big self-driving car, like a big SUV. You put a bed in the back, you click a button, you have it start driving you, you go to bed at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, 8 a.m., you wake up in Lower Manhattan. Then you've got the whole weekend in New York City, and then 9 p.m., you jump on your self-driving car and it drives you back, and you wake up, 2-3 hours before you have to go to work. I mean, this could really disrupt distance transport, and that's really exciting. Now, if cars can drive themselves, then what this might mean is people who can't drive might be able to get around easier. For example, imagine teenagers anywhere from 12 years old to 17. Maybe they can't get around without their parents driving them around. Well, if they get on their app and a car comes, picks them up, and then it takes them off somewhere, they can get around easier. Imagine no more soccer mom, bowling alleys, or whatever, teenagers like to do. I could see a whole thriving industry based around teenagers with rich parents that will send them to the mall or whatever to go hang out. People without cars are really limited in their transportation options in this country because we built our cities around the car. So I could really see thriving industries built around them. Same thing on the other end of the spectrum. Imagine, an elderly person who got their driver's license taken away. Imagine a car is able to take them to the grocery store or doctor's offices. I do worry a little bit about the older generation. It's hard enough trying to get them to use an iPhone or new technology. I'm not totally convinced that all of them will be able to use a self-driving car in an app, but in the long run, I think it will help them out. One funny thought I had about this is I could imagine a phone service where elderly people call in to Tesla and give them their Tesla ID. And then Tesla says, okay, where do you want to go? And then the guy at the other end of the terminal types in the address. And are you still at 123 Mulberry Lane? Yes, I am. Okay, we're going to send the Tesla. It's going to be a white SUV, and it's going to have the number 89 on the side of it. Make sure to get in, and whenever you're ready, close the door and hit the big red button on the center console, and it'll take you to Publix grocery store. Who knows if that'll actually happen, but maybe that'd be a way to increase access for the elderly. But yeah, people that weren't able to get around are going to be able to get around easier, hopefully, because of this. Next thing, the cost of shipping things plummets. Most of the cost of shipping things is fuel, but then the driver. Imagine you're in Las Vegas, you've got a warehouse, at night you load up your truck, and then the truck drives itself to Chicago overnight. It would be obscenely cheap to ship things. And if you make things cheaper, people do more of it. So now you can do even more Amazon packages, more distribution, and more of just-in-time ordering. That's something that's really important in the pharmacy industry. You don't want to have a ton of drug on hand that you're not using that you paid for. You want to have just enough to treat your patients, with a little bit of buffer. And if things are cheaper to transport, you could order less and just keep continuously refilling as you go. Trucks are actually more efficient if they drive slower than highway speeds. The best fuel economy is anywhere from like 20 to 40 miles an hour, depending on your exact setup. So imagine you load up these trucks, you send them off at 10 p.m., and they're on the highway in the right-hand lane with their blinkers on, only going 45 on the highway. I know that sounds dangerous. In rush hour traffic it is, but at 3:30 in the morning when there's no one on the road, you just go around them. So you can have a fleet of trucks just driving across the country slowly, more fuel efficiently, less noise, less pollution, less all of that, and you're not getting in anyone's way, and you're taking trucks off the road during rush hour and putting them on the road when it's nighttime and people aren't using the roads as much. So you could really have a huge efficiency gain in multiple respects. And then once it gets to the location, you have someone there at the other end to unload it. Cost of shipping, massive, massive opportunity. The next thing, the holy grail is the Robotaxi network. So most people, when they think of a self-driving car, they just think of having a car and the car drives you. But that's probably not how it's going to work. If you think about it, if you drive 1 hour per day, that's 7 hours a week. Well, there's 168 hours in a week. About 95% of the time, your car is just sitting there doing nothing for nobody. It's just sitting in a driveway or sitting in a parking lot depreciating. That's all it's doing. Well, imagine if you could increase that utilization. So let's say you go to work at 7 and someone else goes to work at 9. Technically, you only need one car for that. The self-driving car doesn't need you or anyone else in the car to function. It can literally leave your house, go pick up someone else, take them where they're going, turn around, come back to your house. So this is how Tesla is trying to do their network. You buy the car, you pay for full self-driving eventually when it fully rolls out. And then when you're not using your Tesla, the idea is it's going to go out and act like an Uber, drive other people around. They're going to get to it via the app, come pick me up, it'll come pick them up, and then it sends you money. So this is the idea of a robotaxi fleet. It's like, okay, you're not just going to be putting 12,000 miles a year on this car. It could be 5 times the utilization. You could put 60,000 miles on your car. Well, the car puts 60,000 miles on itself. And instead of needing 340 million cars for 340 million Americans, maybe you only need 80 million cars. I mean, a whole, 5 times fewer cars because the utilization goes way up. And so that's really compelling. If a car can come and pick me up at any time, why would I need a car? I don't need to own a car. Why would I buy a car, pay the lease or the loan amount on it, deal with insurance, deal with maintenance, try to deal with the regulatory bodies getting my tags every year. I have an emissions inspection, all this other stuff. I only use a car a couple times a week now because, I work from home. The few times I need it, I just hit my app, it comes, gets me, boom. And then the cost of that car is being distributed over so many different people. So it's a $40,000 car, but instead of one person owning it, it's kind of like 10 people owning it. So for me, the cost, divide that by 10. It's 1/10 the price of running my own car. Now, the math isn't exactly that good. It tends to be about 50 to 65% less, depending on how you run the numbers. But if it's cheaper for me to not own a car, that's what I'm going to do. It's just easier. But this is where the things get really weird. Okay, because we built our entire cities around one person driving one car. Well, if you take that away and I don't need a car, do I need a driver's license? Not really. Do I need a DMV? I mean, what's the DMV for? It's for driver's license and tags and titles. But I don't need to go to the DMV. All I need is personal identification. And if that switches to mobile, then you don't even need a DMV anymore. I mean, this is the kind of things that's really crazy. If I don't have a car that's sitting at my house, do I need a driveway? Do I need a garage? I mean, here's the thing. This is one of my craziest predictions from autonomy. Let's say it's 2075 and there's guided architecture tours, right? And I can just hear the person's voice in my head. And as you can see, this neighborhood was built after 2030. And you can tell that because these homes don't have garages or driveways. And then a little kid raises their hand that was born in, 2071. What's a garage? It's just and then all the old people laugh. But seriously, if you don't need a car, you don't need a parking lot. All you need is when you get to work, you just need a little turnaround space for the car to drop you off, basically a valet. You don't need a parking lot. it just drops you off at the front of the store every time. So much of our cities are dedicated to parking cars. 40% of a busy downtown area is dedicated to cars, whether it's the actual streets, surface parking lots, or parking garages. That is so wasteful. So wasteful. Because imagine instead of parking the car just goes and picks up someone else. And when the cars do need to be parked, you can do it. They drive themselves. They can go outside the city center and park themselves where the land is a little bit cheaper. And you can even do crazier things. I won't get into some of the crazier things. I mean, if it's 3 a.m. and there's no one on the street, you could literally just park the car on the street, not even in a parking spot, on the street, and it just becomes a one-way street. It used to be a 2-lane street, right? But then you park cars on one lane, and then the other lane becomes bi-directional traffic because, if it's self-driving, and they can just say, okay, right now from 231 to 233, it's northbound, and at 234, it's southbound, and then cars can maneuver. And since there's no cars on the road at 3 a.m., it could do stuff like that. So technically, you don't even need parking spaces, kind of. It could just be continuously driving during the day. So, I mean, just crazy things can happen. Another thing is you don't need stoplights. Basically, each light could be a server, a computer, and it senses all the self-driving cars coming in, and instead of one stopping and one going, they just all go, and it's just all going, and they never hit each other because it's all controlled by a computer program. So you might not even need stoplights anymore. I mean, this is the kind of really crazy stuff that could arise out of autonomy. Another thought is, we have UberPool right now in dense cities, meaning, I want it to be a little bit cheaper. I'm willing to walk a block or two to get to the car, and then it picks me up, and then it might pick someone else up on the way there, and then drops us off a little from your destination. You could have something similar happen during rush hour. One thought is that traffic will be completely eliminated due to self-driving cars. I don't think so. Traffic will probably increase, but it will be more efficient flow of traffic, because right now the average trip has about 1 to 1.2 people in it. Most trips are just one person in one car. But if a self-driving car can drive by itself, you don't need someone in that car, so there will actually be trips with essentially 0 miles traveled. The car is traveling miles, but 0 person miles traveled, empty miles. Those are trips that never would have happened before. So I think traffic will probably actually increase. And as you make it cheaper to get around, more people are going to want to get around. So because of that, traffic will increase. But with autonomy, with self-driving cars, you can make everything much more efficient. Be closer together on the highway. You could have them go at higher speeds. One thing I hope is that we do have higher speeds. The Autobahn in Germany, there are parts of it that have no speed limit. It's just such a well-designed highway, and they follow the rules. Once you pass someone, you have to get over. That way someone behind you can go quicker. With self-driving cars and that extra level of safety, I'm hoping that you could increase highway speeds, maybe 80, 90, in certain parts, maybe 100 miles an hour, maybe more, especially in the Midwest where things are really flat. So that could really increase speed and decrease travel times between cities. And the reason highway speeds were decreased to 70 miles an hour nationally was in the 1970s was because of the oil crisis, and we were trying to save fuel. Yeah, it's going to take a lot more energy to go at higher speeds. That increases exponentially the amount of energy used compared to how fast you're going. But if they're electric cars and the energy that you're charging that car with is from solar panels, who gives a crap? You're not creating any emissions. All that energy is just energy from the sun anyway. So it's totally clean. We need to get there yet. We're not there yet. But, at that point, who cares how much energy it costs to go 100 miles an hour, because it's the marginal cost of that energy is basically zero. So that's something I hope for. So the last thing I'd like to talk about is backlash. What's going to happen in the media when this happens? Because anytime you have a brand new technology, people don't like it. Most people get it, but there is a group of people that are negatively affected and that don't like it. So I already kind of talked about when someone dies, someone will die from a robotaxi. It's already happened. It's going to happen again. But basically what happens is instead of 30,000 people dying, if we reduce that by 90% and it's only 27 or to 30,000 people dying, what you're doing is you're changing a statistic to a life. Because of that, again, it's going to make much more headlines. It's going to be a much bigger deal. People don't really understand math, so there will be outrage every time someone dies from a self-driving car, just like a plane. And that's because of risk. People are much more willing to accept risk that they feel like they can control. If you're in charge of the car, you feel like it's less risky. But when you're in a plane and you have no control over the situation and you hit that turbulence, it feels awful. And that's because human beings don't assess risk accurately. It's something that we're just going to have to deal with. There will be backlash from the media. I'm already seeing it. We talked about shipping things across the country. Truck drivers are going to completely lose their jobs. 90% or more of truck drivers will not have a job as a truck driver. Period. No exception. That's going to be really tough because if you went to trucking school and invested in a truck and have it paid off and you're doing all these things, that job is at risk. I have no idea when you're actually going to lose that job. I don't know if it's going to be next year or 10 years from now. But the fact of the matter is, your job is on the line. It is going away. And there is no way to save it. Think about when we transitioned from the horse to the car. You used to have people whose job it was to take care of the horse. Feeding the horse, grooming the horse, shoveling the crap after the horse, storing the horse. You had a whole industry around the horse, and they were not happy when the car came along because they all lost their jobs. Does that mean we shouldn't have transitioned from the horse to the car? No, of course not. Politicians are not going to do anything to try to save truckers' jobs. They're going to storm the Capitol. They're going to be outraged. They're going to have signs. They're going to have rallies. And politicians will do nothing because it is a technological revolution and you cannot stop it, period. The money, the finances are just too strong against you. Truckers will lose their jobs, period, end of story. Another interesting thing that could and might happen, robotaxis are going to have a camera inside the car watching what's happening inside the car. That sounds scary, but taxis already have stuff like that. Basically, we'll probably see certain crimes be solved more easily because of this, whether someone, physical violence or trying to kidnap someone or things like that. We'll see that and we'll be able to get to the bottom of it easier. Just because of that increased surveillance. On the flip side, our privacy will be invaded. There's a lot of things that people and teenagers like to do in the backs of cars. And you probably can't do that in a robotaxi fleet anymore. So that's kind of an American experience that you will no longer have. You could have, but you'll be on camera, shoot. And little moments like that could be taken away. For example, getting in your car, going on a joyride, and every time you see a cool landmark, you just kind of stop and get out and watch. I don't know how a self-driving car is going to do that. Is there going to be a scenic road button that's going to stop at certain landmarks and you get out? If you're driving down the street and you see your buddy and you want to stop and talk to him in the street for a second, how do you do that in a self-driving car? It's just taking you from point A to point B. There might be ways to solve this, but it's just a little tiny thing that we're not really thinking about. And then the last thing is, all of these robotaxis, they've got GPS. Again, they've got the camera. They've got all the location data. I could see a case where someone robbed a store and tried to use a robotaxi to get away. And then the FBI comes in and says, Tesla, give me your data so we can find out where this guy went. And it becomes this big thing. Apple, years ago, remember the San Bernardino case? They said, we're not going to unlock this guy's iPhone because if we do that, then you'll have to unlock everybody's iPhone and then privacy will be destroyed and the end of the world. So you will be tracked much more in the self-driving car because all that location data will be there. Now, we'll have to see what happens. Does Tesla keep all that data private? Refuse to give it to the government? Does the government make a law that says you have to give it to us in the case of a criminal investigation? Does the government find a way to tap into it and get the information anyway? Now, technically, we're already being tracked with our phones, but you could get away from that if you wanted to. If you have no car and no way to get around, and you have to click on your phone to get a ride, to get in a car that also tracks you, There are serious privacy concerns, but that is the case with every new technology. They'll have all these sensors, and there's always privacy concerns with every new technology. It's just going to be something that we have to think about. And lastly, there's going to be people are just going to have a better state of mind and a better mental health. People get really frustrated in traffic, road rage, impatience, poor driving, poor judgment on the roads. Robotaxis will take care of all of that. You won't be anxious when you get to work. You won't be anxious when you're trying to, oh, there's traffic. I'll just turn on Netflix. So I think people's mental health will increase significantly. At least I know mine will, because driving for me is very mentally taxing, and I will appreciate not having to do that anymore. And so that's kind of my final thoughts. Self-driving cars are going to change everything from expense to how we get around, to how we're tracked getting around, to literally how our homes and properties and cities are built. They're going to be built differently when the self-driving car arises. So I'm really excited for that technology, and I hope you guys really start thinking, what does this mean when cars don't need you to drive them? Anyway, this is the Mo Money Mango podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good night.